The story of how Kelley came to be with us is that back in my acting days, I was good friends with Bryan Cranston, who's the star of Breaking Bad, and well, I'm still very good friends. Anyway, I wrote him and I said, is there any chance of getting one of your editors come to LACPUG? And he gave me Kelley Dixon's email, and I wrote Kelley, and she said yes. Again, he says, how do you get all these editors come to LACPUG? You ask them. That's all you do. You ask them, and then most of the time they'll say yes if they are available. Unfortunately, when I first asked Kelley, it was last November, and so she's been working ever since, and she is working actually right now, and she took the time off to be with us, and we are very, very grateful for you being here, so thank you for that.
That's my pleasure. Thanks. Thanks.
Anyway, Kelley Dixon will be returning to the hit series Breaking Bad for season 5. I thought it was like season 8.
It's like 5B. What are they?
Isn't it called season?
It's like 5 part 2.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a contractual thing.
Yes, it could be. I thought it was like season 8. Anyway, she's going to be going back to Albuquerque or...
No, I work here.
Actually, you work here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. Oh, anyway, you're staying here while they start filming in November.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Anyway, she's had a great year working on the HBO pilot Luck and the Showtime series Shameless. God, I love Shameless. It's so cool.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Thank you. Thanks.
Kelley has been nominated twice by the America Cinema Editors, ACE, for Season 3 and Season 4 of Breaking Bad, and just recently has been nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Breaking Bad Season 4 episode End Times.
Yeah.
She unfortunately...
I lost.
Yeah, she lost. You were much better episode. But then Homeland is...
That's nice. Homeland is great.
It's a good series. Yeah.
Homeland is great.
But this is cool, and this will make a lot of you feel pretty good. After working as a production assistant and an assistant editor on features and television for 17 years...
Oh, that's embarrassing.
Kelley landed an editing position on Season 1 of Breaking Bad. Now, she is currently editing a TV movie right here in LA, and she took a break to be with us tonight. And what's even cooler is this guy right next to me, Trevor Baker, who's the post coordinator on Breaking Bad. You know what his first gig out of film school was? Breaking Bad. Everything in his career is downhill from here. Anyway, welcome to LACPUG, Kelley Dixon and Trevor Baker.
Wow. Thank you everybody so much. You know, when Michael got in touch with me, I thought it was actually longer. I thought I had been putting you off for so long, and I felt bad about it. It was like when he got in touch with me this time, it was right after Breaking Bad had shut down for the end of season 5A, I guess you could say. And he said, you know, I said, what do I need to prepare? And he said, oh, it'd be great if you could bring like an editor's cut and then show the difference in a director's cut. And I'm like, I don't have all that. I'm so sorry, but there's no way. We had been shut down, and so I'm sorry I don't have things like that for you. But what I thought I could do is I could show you a couple clips, and I'm sure that all of you have a lot of questions. Even when we snuck in right at the end of Kevin Tent, you guys were asking some great questions. I was like, oh my God, those are really tough questions. But what I also brought was, I brought Trevor Baker. He's our post coordinator this year. And he knows, I'm sure there's a lot of questions that you guys might have as far as how we do things technically, and a lot of those answers I will not have for you, but he will. So you get a twofer, you know. And the other thing about Trevor is, you know, I'm sure that there might be some questions about how do you get into the business. I mean, everybody's story is different. I got into the business, you know, through the mailroom, but I was like delivering the mail in 1988. God, dating myself. But Trevor just got out of college. I mean, he just graduated from CSUN, like, what, a couple years ago?
Yeah,
So,
I was the intern.
Yeah, so he got an intern job on Breaking Bad because it was like a friend of your mom knew The woman who cut the pilot, his mom knew Trevor. It's all nepotism, But I didn't have nepotism at all. But Trevor did. No. But the thing is that Trevor actually came to us, and he was a really good intern. So they gave him a PA job. I mean, he wasn't paid as an intern. They gave him a PA job the next day. In fact, I had to actually call him and tell him, "Do you want that job? They're looking for somebody. Do you want it?" And, "Yeah, but I don't want to bother them." Bother them. I always tell people too when they're trying to like get jobs, whether it's an editing job, and these are established editors too, that will call, we'll have lunch or something. They'll say, "I don't know who to call," and I'm like, "Call anybody. Call the shows that you like." And they'll say, "Oh, but I don't want to bug anybody." Who do you think answers the phone? Trevor's answering the phone. The executive producer of a show is not going to be answering that phone. So don't be afraid, because, I know it's kind of cliche, and you've probably heard the statement before, but it's like the job that you're afraid to go look for or call, somebody like Trevor has called them and is taking your job. So don't be afraid to do that. Anyway, I didn't want to get off on a tangent. I was going to tell a little bit about myself. Like Michael said, I was an assistant editor for an unbearable amount of time. And I actually got quite embarrassed about it, because most of the people that I was assisting with, my friends who were assistant editors, were moving up. And I was like, geez, I better get it in gear. And I'm glad you guys have heard a little bit of, you've heard way more about Kevin Tent than I have, but I actually wanted to be an assistant editor like Kevin Tent. When I first got into I was a production assistant on 30-something. 6 months after delivering the mail at MGM, I got a production assistant job at 30-something, and I wanted to get to be a feature assistant, a really good feature assistant. A feature editor's assistant, excuse me, because those guys, they get paid a lot of money. They don't have to look for work, because that editor gets the calls. So all you have to do is wait at home and show up where they tell you to show up, and you go to all points of the globe, and it's really amazing, and you have this great life, and you're working on these awesome films that people hear about or have seen trailers about, and they're like, "Oh my God, you get to work with that person, that person." It never happened. It never happened. I got close a couple times, but it never happened. And then I realized that basically I better kind of get it in gear. Do I want to edit, or do I want to sit here and assist in television a lot? Luckily, I actually did a miniseries with an editor named Lynn Willingham. I knew her in two ways. I didn't know her personally then, but I knew her name. She was an editor for 5 seasons on The X-Files. Her husband, Chris Willingham, was an editor on my favorite show at the time, which was 24, and he was also a 3-time Emmy winner. And he was like, every year that he was nominated for an Emmy, he won. And it was like, once I found out this miniseries had Lynn Willingham on, I'm like, oh my God. It was like, when I met her, I said, "Oh my God, I'm a huge fan of yours." And she's like, okay, like she was like Nolan Ryan or something. And she teases me about that nowadays. But anyway, so I worked on that miniseries, and then she got a job on Without a Trace, and she needed an assistant. So I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. And I also knew that she would let me do a lot of cutting. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. I went and worked there. We did it for a season and a half. And she was like, she liked that job a lot, because she could come to work like around 11 o'clock. It wasn't that far from the house. It was an easy job for her. She could leave at like 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I was doing a lot of the cutting because she let me. It was a deal that I sort of said, I'd like to cut at least a scene a day, maybe 2 scenes a day, because that's the way you kind of have to get your chops up to start, cutting. Nowadays with Breaking Bad is like a show that is like maybe, I don't know, about it's about 48 minutes, 47 minutes when it's, in its finished state. Editor's cuts can run, between about 53 minutes all the way up to like over 60 minutes. We've had them. So basically, you kind of have to get yourself into a groove where you can get, a bunch of work done per day. Like if you put yourself on a, like say a 6 or 7 minute, schedule a day, then over 10 days, that's 60 minutes that you've cut. But as an assistant, you've got all of your assistant work too, and then you try and cut. So even with Trevor, He's been cutting scenes for me, and I try and get him, like, cut a scene a day, and then I give him notes, and that's what happened to me. I try and pay that forward. I've always tried to pay that forward. But anyway, so I worked on Without a Trace with her, but I knew that the only way that I was pretty much going to get moved up, that was right around 2006, I believe, 2006, 2007, was the only way to move up at that point was to get on a pilot. If you assisted on a pilot, there was a really good chance that the pilot got picked up. You had made enough of an impression with a good editor who was very generous and who would talk you up with the producers. There's a good chance of getting moved up. So there was one day where, I knew that Lynn probably wasn't going to take a pilot because Without a Trace was easy, and, she pretty much had it made. She's a great editor, but, and so I'm gonna have to move away. I'm gonna have to go find another editor to work for. And if she doesn't, want to move. And one day I was about to do an output, and she comes in, she closes the door, and I'm like, why are you closing the door? And she's like, I got a pilot. And I'm like, you're not going to go. And she's like, I'm going. I'm like, well, what is it? Oh, it's something that Vince Gilligan did. And I was like, oh, let's go. I couldn't wait. I want to go tomorrow, because I was a huge X-Files fan, and I hadn't met Vince Gilligan yet, but she had really great things to say about him. And so I read the pilot, and we were all excited, and we went and did it. And the rest, I guess, is history. So that's my short story. Sorry, I hope it wasn't too boring, and I don't think it took too long. So Trevor's story is a little bit different. You can tell your story, and then I'll show a clip. How about that?
Yeah, no, I'm fairly new in the industry. I was Breaking Bad's intern, which was incredible. The way I got the internship was my neighbor was Lynn Willingham's sister, and I just asked, and she was awesome. She let me come on, and then was lucky enough to come on as their PA, and the following season come on as their post coordinator. And also, one thing that has been awesome for me is in between last hiatus, I worked really, really hard to get my editor's days on non-union gigs. So I'm also in the union. So the assistants, when they need to take vacation or they have any sort of emergency, I'm able to cover for them as well. So now I'm able to do post-coordinating and also assistant edit. And it's something where, I could be, now that I'm in the union, I could go and try and find an assistant gig, but I'm lucky enough to be on a show that's Breaking Bad. So
yeah.
it's
and Breaking Bad's going to
really
end, so
also,
he's got
yeah.
only a couple more months, like through like next May or something. So he can go look then. And he'll look on his resume that he
So.
Plus, he gets to cut Breaking Bad. He gets to cut a lot of stuff. So.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean, Kelley is amazing about that. So.
I try, you know what I mean? There's a lot of editors that I know that don't do enough for their assistants, and the only reason that I'm in the position I'm in is because I had a generous editor who did let me do that. And one thing I will say is that if you are working, if you want to do that, don't expect anybody to know what you want. You have to go and tell them. And if they're not doing what you might be able to, if they're not willing to listen or make some kind of concession, try and find somebody else, because it's really, really hard to make it out there. And it's like there's so many people who are generous out there, and it's the best thing to do is to find one. There are a lot of them.
And
there
really,
are a lot of us.
And really the great thing, at least for me, is it's not just the fact that I'm able to cut this awesome material. The notes that Kelley gives me puts me, years ahead if I was trying to figure this out on my own.
That's so sweet. You're so nice.
So, yeah.
Anyway, I was going to show a clip. This is, it's probably going to, I hope that most of you know the show. I don't think I'm giving anything away. This is actually a clip from season 2, but I was trying to think of one that I really, really liked. It's not necessarily, it's one of my favorite clips, but it was one of my very favorite clips even till now to cut. It was really enjoyable to work on this scene. Everything was firing at 100%. The actors were always great, but the cameras were always in the right place. It was not difficult. It was nice, and everything was moving. My personal style, it's like I like to use anything that's moving around, especially if the camera is handheld and the actors are moving too. Walt has basically made this big deal with Gus Fring It's really the episode before this one was the first time we'd ever seen Gus Fring, and he's gone to Jesse's apartment to get the meth, but Jesse is zoned out on heroin, so Walt basically breaks in and takes the meth. This is the scene where Jesse has figured out that Walt has taken the meth, and he's really angry. It's also actually the only scene where Jesse actually came to Walt's classroom. I believe that's, it's the only scene. So anyway, enjoy. So, I guess, like I said, that's one of my very favorite scenes. I hadn't seen it in a long time. It's not that I forgot about it, but, I mean, I've cut, I think, over 20 some odd shows out of the what did we figure, 53 that we've done so far, something like that. And, usually a show is about, between 50 and 60 scenes. But I was looking through some stuff just to see what I was going to present tonight, and I remembered that scene. And I still think it's one of my very favorite ones to work on because, it has a lot of peaks and valleys. Tension ratchets up, then it kind of breathes, then it ratchets up again. And the two guys are so phenomenal together. And I love any time that they are in conflict, which is most of the time. But any time. But on that one, it's like what's wonderful about it is there's not a whole lot of space to move around, but yet it's constantly moving. The cameras are in great positions every single time, and it's just that everything was firing on all cylinders on that scene. And like I said, I'm a sucker for any time an actor is moving and a handheld camera is moving either with them or behind them. I will use that every single time. I will find ways to use that stuff. So, so I thought I'd show that, and then I always know that there's usually a lot of questions. There's probably more questions about how we do the show than about me. So I just thought I'd open it up, for questions. I can't see anybody. Can somebody help me? Oh, okay. Sorry. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. I was an assistant for 17 years, and I really don't know many editors that use it. I'm sure it is used. Thankfully, I have not been on a show that a lot of times nowadays we have to share assistants. More often than not, you don't have your own assistant anymore. And if there's an editor that uses that thing, that assistant is like on lockdown for hours. So I will say, unfortunately, I was on a show that had an editor that really required that, and it drove me nuts because I was basically having to do a lot of my own assistant work because the assistant was busy using ScriptSync. And my feeling is you need to watch your dailies. You need to watch your dailies, period. That's all there is. That's what our job is. We should enjoy that part of it. I do know that lately, because of shooting digitally, there's a lot of cameras, a lot more cameras, and a lot more film. There's a lot more footage now, I guess, that is there. And I've learned to watch my dailies in quad split because it just takes so much of your day. And when I was working on Shameless, that was really crazy. If anybody of you have ever seen Shameless, all the cameras are doing this constantly, and no take is the same. But you just have to get used to it, and you got to watch your dailies. So that's my feeling. Sorry, I can't see. Back here. Yeah, if somebody could.
Guys in the booth, bring the lights up.
You're
House lights up. So
you right there in front of my friend Eric. Yeah, you.
So you're watching your dailies in quad. How do you keep track of and log and keep in your head the good parts, the parts you might want?
Well,
3 or 4 cameras at a time, and
well, on most shows are only using 2. Shameless is a tough one because the cameras are always moving all over the place. But that's an anomaly. Most shows don't do that kind of thing. So you're only really having to keep track of 2. And if they're fairly traditional, it's going to be a bigger shot and a closer shot. So really, it's not that hard. But on shows that it's a little tougher, I have a button on one of my function buttons is a locator. I use Avid. And one of my function buttons is a locator, and when it's a function button, you can hit it and it won't stop the run. So it'll just throw, a locator up there, and you'll just, you can just say remember, and you can set a couple different ones for different colors, stuff like that. The other thing is, I just remember stuff in my head. I mean, it's definitely something that you acquire as you practice. You remember stuff. I think Trevor actually asked me at one point, maybe last year or something, if I watch all my dailies before I start cutting a scene. And I hate to say this because it's gonna make me sound really bad, but no, I don't watch all my dailies, because sometimes, especially on Breaking Bad, we can have, the average length of a finished scene on Breaking Bad is like 6 minutes, which is really long, relative to most television. And so we're getting dailies that are probably like, for that scene is gonna be like, 2.5, 3 hours. I would be bored to death. And I would lose all of the spontaneity and all of the freshness that I'd seen in the scene. But what I will say is, I do not watch everything before I start, but by the time I'm finished with that scene, I've seen every stitch of it. So, yes?
What is your workspace like? Do you have a notepad? Do you make notes? Do you have a storyboard, or you just work from the script and straight into your script?
I have a notebook, but I don't tend to take a lot of notes. I probably should, but I don't. When producers and directors come in, then I'll write notes down, of course, so I can remember what they want. But I don't take a lot of notes when I'm watching dailies. I just usually will remember, or if it comes down to where I really, it's so much footage and I really need to make sure I remember something, I'll stop and pull out a subclip and just put that in the bin and just say, that I need to look at that. There's something about that piece that I need, and then I usually remember why, and then I'll just start cutting. Usually, sometimes I'll buzz through, just the mouse just to see what's going on. A lot of times, we're lucky that we have really good actors, we have really good crew, and we have really good directors that come to play on this show. So, usually you can tell what their plan was, sometimes not, or sometimes they may have different ways that they're trying to get into a scene, but usually you can tell. And sometimes, a lot of times, you'll see what their plan was, but you have a better one. And so, you'll start there. And that's why I'm saying that if I watched every single take of dailies and every single stitch of it before I even started, I would just be so bogged down with way too much information. So usually if I see, I'll read the scene, I'll have seen it in my head. If I see what the director has done, if they've done something unusual, like a long one-er or something to get into it, obviously you're gonna start there. But I gotta tell you, sometimes they have done that and you start a different way anyway, And then I just start in, and then, when I run into something where I'm like, oh, now I see what they wanted to do, you try and work that in. And then sometimes you just have to make a deal, you just have to say, well, I like my way better, and they're probably gonna like that way. Sometimes you cut a couple versions, to make sure that they don't think you're a total jerk and, didn't want to do what they do. I've had one time where I got some storyboards. It was a montage that was done by the director was Adam Bernstein, and it was the montage that we did to the song Wendy. Does anybody remember, with the prostitute? That one came in with storyboards, but even then I was like, I threw them away and did my own thing. I ended up having to recut the thing to his version, but it was funny because I was looking at that clip the other night too, going, damn, I wish I had my original version, because I hadn't seen it in a long time and I still felt like it was better. Anyway, back there, sorry, you, in the dark shirt, yeah.
This might be just maybe naive. Do you get a shooting script for the show? How much time in advance do you know what the show is? Does it change in the process?
Oh yeah, it does. What happens is on our show is, our show's very popular, and it's popular with us too. We want to read it as soon as possible. And what's really funny is our writers, I don't know if, I do a podcast, I don't know if anybody's ever listened to the Breaking Bad Insider podcast, but we do a lot of talking about the writer's room. And we've done it since, I'm not trying to do a plug, I'm just saying that if you're interested of the writer's room, we do a lot of talking about that process on that podcast, and we've done it since the beginning of season 2. But what happens is that the writers, there's about, I think there's 7 of them, 7 of them including Vince, and they all are in a room together constantly. Unless one of them is off writing a script, they work together, which is unusual. I mean, it's different than a lot of writers' rooms in television where there'll be a few people in the writer's room pitching a show or something, and there'll be other writers in their own offices. These guys work at a conference table probably about 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. And they do that from, this time to write the last 8 episodes. They've been in there since August, and they will start shooting, I think, in late November. But before, for season, I think the beginning of season 5, which we just finished, they were in there from November until when did we start? Until March. Yeah. They were there, and then they were working still up until June to write these scripts. So the thing is, and to make a long story short, the thing is that what they will do is they will break their stories, and then the writer of that episode will write about a 13-page outline of the show, and it's like reading a short story. And they do that mostly because everybody especially in production in Albuquerque, they need to prep the show, and they don't have a script yet. They're really, sometimes these scripts don't come out until the day before. And so, yeah. And so they write this outline, and it's like reading a short story. And usually, more oftentimes, and I hate to admit it, but more oftentimes, we, in post, the other editor and I, we pretty much get the story from the outline and, may never read the script. A lot of times I have read the outline so I know what's happening. And then my assistant has read the script, and I'll just say, hey, has anything changed? Sometimes it has, because, honestly, it's kind of look, the script is the script, and I'm going to get what the script is, when I get the dailies. I'm not trying to be lax about it. I do read the scripts, but sometimes you are so busy, this year, me and the other editor, Skip, we didn't even get a chance to watch each other's shows. I hadn't even seen the first episode until right before it aired, and I'm sitting, my room is probably maybe 7 feet by 10 feet, and we share a wall, but I hadn't seen the episode and he hadn't seen mine. So anyway, we don't get the scripts until the very last minute, and if we have time, we'll sit there and read it. But usually we get the story from the outline. That's with me. I don't know about him, but I think we both usually get the story from the outline. And we also try not to give spoilers, because sometimes people, the other editor may not have had a chance to read that great, that train episode that happened this year. We all knew about it before the editor did. And we were all trying to keep quiet because he didn't even know what he was going to get, because he just hadn't had time to read it. So anyway, there was some, okay, I'm sorry, because I skipped you before.
You guys do a lot of montages.
We do.
You were talking about continuously, very effects heavy, fast motion, time lapse. Can you talk a little bit about your process?
Somebody asked me this at this panel that I did, so I don't know how many of you were there a couple of weeks ago when I did this panel, so I don't want to be too repetitive. But my process, I think I've probably cut the most of these things. I was an assistant on the pilot, and I actually cut that one too. And my process for the montage, except for the 2 that aired in this last finale that we did, that was a whole different process. But most of the time, it is getting all the dailies in and making a lot of select reels. You just watch them at real time, and you select stuff that looks interesting. And make your select reel, and then make another one. And sometimes you'll like the longest one I ever had was the one where Walt and Jesse got stuck in the desert in the RV, where they went for 4 days to make meth. And that one I think had a 3 or 4 hours of stuff. Now this montage was probably I don't know, a minute 50 or something. I can't imagine it was more than 2 minutes. But it was I basically, when I cut the show, we get about, the show shoots for 8 days. I get about 10 days to cut the show, and then I have to deliver an editor's cut. If there is a montage in that show, I have to cut the show way faster, because I need to leave at least a day or even 2 days just for that 2 minutes. So I'm spending way less time on individual scenes than I'm spending on 2 minutes of the show. But I'll do select reels if they've already chosen. Sometimes they've chosen music that they want to use already. Most times they haven't. So I'll choose something. Our music supervisor will send over about 20 songs. I'll choose one that I like and just something to cut to. And it doesn't even matter what it is. It's just something with a beat, dance to it, you know. You can, and so, you know, I'll like make a select reel. Like my select reel may be, for that one, I think I had, the first select reel I had was like at least a half an hour. And all it was like really quick cuts of like, you know, like Jesse pouring something in a beaker, you know. And I probably had that, like 40 different shots of it. And I'm like, oh God, I just need one, you know, it's, pick the best one. Okay, all right, well, I have him doing it from this angle, I have him do it from that angle. Okay, I like those two. And I'll usually cut it where he's doing it from this one and, you know, I'll make a quick cut to the other angle. But basically, it's like trying to make selects. And then what you do is, what I do is if I have a 30-minute select reel, I'll take the music that I've decided on and just start looping it and watch it. Just watch the select reel with the music for 30 minutes. And it drives everybody in. We have a very small, like it's a very small office. We have a big, like a bullpen that's probably about, I don't know, maybe 40 feet. Yeah. And probably maybe like, I don't know, 20 feet wide. And then there's 3 satellite offices that are off that. And I have the middle one, the other editor has the one on the end, and the one on the far end the assistants use. And so we all hear everybody's music constantly. And most of the time we have no idea what they're doing with that music. And we're like, oh, that's a good song. Oh, that's an awful song. I can't wait until they're done with that. And everybody gets very familiar with the music. And you just play it to death. You just play it to death. And then, you know, so what I do is I throw the music, you know, against the select reel, and then I make another select reel of the selects. And then you just start trying stuff. One thing that I heard Kevin Tint say is, you know, you have to, like, you know, be open to trying different things. But I think also you have to be open to realizing when you have something good and keeping it. And, you know, there's a lot of times where, you know, you may have developed a unique taste for some of the things that you like or a style that you like that your producer may not like or your director may not be on board with, you know. Like, there's one director, I'm not going to say who he is, but there's one director there that, like, doesn't really like, you know, I like to, like, do a lot of quick cutting and do stuff like that. He calls it a salad, and it drives me crazy. I want to just punch him. I mean, not really, but, you know, I'm just like, this is art, man. This isn't easy to do. A lot of people can't do this, you know. But he calls it that, and I just get a little annoyed. But, you know, it's, you know, I'm like, well, you know. But anyway, you just have to, like, be bold enough to realize when you have something cool and keep it. And if they don't let you keep it, a lot of times with our show, Vince will come in and he'll say, show me what you did. You know, so, you know, he'll watch the director's cut, but he'll be like, show me what you did. Or he'll say, do you have something else that you want to show me? You know, which is really nice because a lot of people don't do that. Oh, shit. See, look at that. It went like so fast. Do you guys want to see a clip or would you rather just know? Would you rather just have questions? Clip? Okay. It's actually one of the montages. Totally different process because this one was scripted. But I hope that I'm not giving anything away. I apologize, but if you showed up, you should realize that we were going to use some of the finale stuff. This is actually a clip of, we call it the Jail Montage. Walt has basically gotten some ex-cons to get together and kill off 10 people that, you know, kind of can finger him. Within 2 minutes, yes. And one of the things I will say is I can't take total credit for this. I have to give credit to our music supervisor who actually said to me, this was actually scripted very differently than it ended up being in our cut. And our music supervisor, when we were trying to figure out music for it, he said, you know, it would be kind of cool if you made it so it was actually 2 minutes by the clock. And I was like, wow, because the scripted way, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So I did it a different way, and luckily everybody liked it, and it is almost 2 minutes by the clock. It's actually about 1:55. So, anyway. Thank you. Just to let you know that, like I said, that clip, that montage was not written like that. All the little jail pieces were written like they are, but they were not supposed to be in that order. What was supposed to happen, if I remember correctly, was the lawyer who's on the phone in the beginning was just supposed to be on the phone. It was just supposed to be a regular scene. He's actually talking to his wife, saying, "Don't cry, honey." And then they were supposed to kill him. And then we were supposed to see Walt, start a stopwatch and do all of that. And sometime in the middle there, we were supposed to go to Hank with the little girls softball team, and he was supposed to get all riled up. There's actually dialogue that you can hear. And I actually threw all that out. It was in the editor's cut like that. The only thing that wasn't like that in the editor's cut was the song. The song actually came to us much later, and I did a little bit of tweaking once we decided on the song and tried to make things happen on the beat and had to cut a couple things, but it was not like that. It's like 5.5 seasons, and just said I think it should be done this way. No, thanks. Back in the back. Yeah, you.
I have two questions. The first question is the ticking of the clock. There's a similarity between the ticking of the clock and the shanking
Yeah.
sound effect, and I was wondering if that was just one of those happy accidents, if that's something you thought of in the editorial. There's a sound similar to the clock tick 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 in the shanks
This is the first time I've heard that. Wow, that's cool. No, it's a happy act. As far as I'm concerned, it's a happy accident. But I will say that I can't take total credit. We have an incredible Emmy-nominated sound team that goes behind me. But I actually do. Oh my God, Kevin, you weren't supposed to be here. You haven't seen. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Were you here when I was talking about wanting to be your assistant? Were you here then too? Damn. No, like I said, I've never heard that. That's cool. It's so funny because sometimes I'll read things on. We all will read things in reviews and on blogs and stuff about the show, and we'll be like, wow, we never thought of that. We never saw that. Wow, that's so cool. So, no, I never heard that. That's kind of neat, but that wasn't necessarily my plan. Yeah, you said you had two, so sure.
Kevin said something about how in the first cut he'll try and stick to the script. I mean, pretty sincerely.
Uh-huh.
And I know that on TV, much more accelerated schedule. Sometimes you have to take liberties with the first pass. And I was wondering if you could speak to the different dynamics for television as opposed to.
Well, it's not necessarily just television. It really depends on the show that you're on, and you just kind of have to read the situation. Breaking Bad is probably it's like no other show, and I was an assistant on a lot of stuff, so it is like no other show I've ever seen. The amount of opportunity there for anybody that wants to pitch something. I'm not talking about pitching an idea for the show, but there have been a ton of ideas that Trevor has done, other PAs have done. My assistant actually did something for the website that AMC picked up. So it is a place that is very everybody is very approachable. And so you kind of know that you have a little bit of freedom. I mean, I don't know if I would have tried to go off book when I was in my second season, but by the time I was in my 5th season, I was like, look, this is going to fit together better. But, on the other hand, you got to make a couple versions. I was going out on a limb doing this, but I just thought, well, my initial thought with this one, and it's not like it was a debate, it was an internal debate. I just kind of looked at the script and said, well, honestly, when the killing starts, I think the killing should keep going. It's just like having the momentum there. And just, even what it was supposed to be was it's supposed to be that lawyer, then Walt, and then it said in the script, in fact, I have it, although I'm not going to bring it up. But it said basically, then the montage of the 9. But I was like, when I cut this, I cut all those little vignettes together separately, just as their own scenes, just made these cuts. And then what I wanted to do was I felt like logically, guys in the same jail, and you can tell by the colors that they're wearing, they shouldn't necessarily die in order. They shouldn't be, 2 brown guys shouldn't be together. At the end, the orange guys did because I just couldn't resist the guy's throwing the guy over, running down the stairs, and then I had a shot of orange feet running down the stairs. I was like, it wasn't supposed to be like that, but I was like, this is too good. This is too good of a transition. I'm not gonna, and of course, the director of this episode, a wonderful woman. She's an executive producer on our show. She directs quite a bit, and I knew that she's much more absolutely literal to the script, much more than I am. And I knew it was going to take a little bit of convincing, but in this situation, what you have to do is you have to make the package really good, so you got to affect it, you got to make, you want to sell it, to those people, and they already had a lot of faith in me because I've done a lot of these montages. So it was kind of like, when I took the clue from our music supervisor, tried really to make it in 2 minutes because I thought that would be neat, but and that was not on their radar. I had to tell them, oh, by the way, it's 2 minutes by the clock, and I'm talking producers and directors, excuse me, but I knew that if I could sell a good package, they might go for it, and it honestly never changed, just minor tweaks in the music. Back in the back.
Yeah, I've heard, I work on a show myself, and we have a very traditional schedule, but I've heard that you guys will actually take a break so Vince can work on several groups and blocks of shows as
Yeah.
opposed to the usual, which is block a show.
Yeah, he couldn't work that way. There's no way. He just couldn't do it. What happens is, and I was actually quite surprised that this actually happened. Honey, I'm so sorry that you're here. I didn't know. Sorry about that. But if you hadn't been here, there would have been a ton of technical questions I wouldn't have been able to answer. What happened was, usually television will be a rotating and a sort of producer will be writing in the writer's room, then they'll go to editorial and work on a show, then they'll go back to the writer's room, and Vince doesn't do that. And I was actually surprised that he actually got the studio and the network to actually budget to let him do this. But he works in the writer's room until all the scripts are done. As they're working in the writer's room, they are also shooting in Albuquerque, and every year they get to the end in the writer's room, and they're just right there needing that script to prep that last episode. I mean, it really works like that. Then what happens is he comes in and sits in editorial for another 15 weeks, and we do all producers' cuts. So the other editor and I are working on editor's cuts, director's cuts, editor's cut. We swap shows. Like he'll do the first one, I'll do the second one. He'll do the third one, I'll do the fourth one. And we're working, and our days are basically editor's cut, do all your dailies, do your director's cut, then you start your editor's cut again. And we'll just shelve those shows. They'll sit there. And then Vince comes in at the end and sits there, and he goes from room to room for 15 weeks, 13 weeks, 15 weeks.
Speaking of the other editor is Skip McDonald.
Skip McDonald.
Do you guys consult with each other? Do you help each other? Or?
No. No. We don't even speak. No. No. There has never come, I should preface this. There was one episode that we did together. It was the season finale of, I believe, season 3. It was called Full Measures. And we mostly did it because it was like they had kind of said, well, we'd like both of you to do it. It was one of Vince's. Vince was going to direct it, and they kind of said, well, why don't you guys share it? And so, but we've never done that before. And we haven't done it since. It's not that we didn't want to. It's just that the schedule just didn't work itself out. But that's the only time, and even on that one, we didn't really work together.
Does he work here in L.A. with you in that little 40-foot room?
Yeah, he works. We share a common wall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no. There's always there's always the thought where, if you need help, I'll help. I'll help. We'll always do that. But you're usually so busy that if the other guy or me or Skip has been working till midnight all this time, and now he can go home at 7, let him go. You know what I mean? So that's basically.
Now, you've had experience both feature films and television, and at when I was doing the introduction, you say there is a big difference in doing television.
There's a big
we have to
difference,
remind
isn't there,
everybody.
Kevin?
This is AMC, and I would imagine it's because it's not NBC or CBS or ABC. Breaking Bad's got a small budget.
I can't speak. I know that they do, but I really don't have any idea what it is. I mean, I know we're always hurting for money.
And
That's
how
what
much?
I hear.
All right,
but you know,
how much time do you got? I mean, what's the difference
To
between
edit?
doing? How much time? Yeah, what's the difference between doing television,
this is
especially
something actually
episodic?
that this guy can help
All
me
right.
with, because honestly, I don't know. You know,
Yeah, because
I know
Trevor
that-
has said like 3 words all night.
yeah, I'll
and-
let Trevor. You know what? I know that they shoot the show in 8 days. I have about 10 days to cut an editor's cut.
Oh,
then
wow.
the director gets 4 days, and then we shelve the show.
And you do
until
that in
Vince.
8-hour days, right?
12-hour days.
All right, Trevor, take it over.
Yeah.
What is the difference?
And then
between-
what happens? Yeah.
Between features and television.
Well,
I can't really.
No, like-
I've
well,
only
all right.
done-
Well,
No, just talk about like what happens
process?
after. You know, how much time does it take from when we locked it? You know, from when we may finish a director's cut? Because there's a lot of time.
I mean,
involved.
I mean, Breaking Bad's a little weird just because when Breaking Bad started, AMC was a pretty new network, and they kind of
All they had was Mad Men
yeah
and us.
And luckily we have great post producers that kind of do the schedule, but it does vary. But when Vince once Vince finishes his cut, like basically
It takes
the next-
about 2 weeks after producers lock the show
that we're
we're mixing the show.
And there's certain bumps in the road with the earlier episodes. Sometimes that we're not on that schedule, but by the end, it's about 2 weeks.
Yeah, because we get kind of bogged down at the end.
Yeah. And the nice thing, I mean, on the note of Breaking Bad being a low budget show, the nice thing is we have such great writers and such a great team that we may not have zombies dying every second of our show, but when something does happen, it really does hit you. And it's really they're very selective, but the execution is so well. So.
and you guys are really big fans of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Huge fans. Yeah.
Everybody on the show is such a huge fan. Like I said, when we get these outlines, people are like, I mean, these outlines come and they have your name like, watermarked on them and stuff. This year we had redacted stuff. Like we didn't even know, what was going to happen. But even for us, like I got a line script at one point, and it was redacted. And I called down my post supervisor. I'm like, my post producer, and I called her up and I said, I think I know what's supposed to happen because I read this outline, but my script is redacted. Is there any way I can get, And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you got a redacted one. Redacted means that it's got the black.
We got time
through
for
the lines
a
and
couple
stuff.
of more questions.
You guys, you pick. I feel like I can't be.
so
You've
hard.
been asking. Had your hand out. I'm sorry.
So throughout the show a lot, you see Jesse and Walt actually like cooking meth.
Yeah.
In order to like edit that correctly, do you
Okay, that's
good
an interesting question.
Repeat that question.
Okay. You just are asking like, how in the world do I know the order of that meth goes together? That's actually an interesting question, and I've actually had that question before. What happened was during the pilot, I had been cutting a while for Lynn Willingham, and really, when the pilot script came out, all that it said was. Jesse and Walt cook meth to, jump cutty with cool music. That's all it said, something like that. And I had never met Vince Gilligan because he was in Albuquerque, and we couldn't get a hold of him because he was just so busy. And so we had no idea what kind of music he liked, what he was thinking of what. We emailed him, but we got nothing. And so I actually ended up calling a friend of mine who does Grey's Anatomy, and I said, can I get your rejects, And he's like, I can't really do that for you. We pay a lot of money for our supervisor, and I would get in trouble. But when I'm looking for, independent music, I'll go on MySpace. Back when, because there was a lot of independent bands on MySpace. So I pulled some music from MySpace, and I gave it to the editor, Lynn, and I said, here's some tracks that I think are cool. And she's like, you know what? I don't have time. You're good at this. You do this. So I'm like, all right. So, and then I came to her and I'm like, how am I supposed to know I can do a montage, but I have no idea how to cook meth. She goes, oh, they shot it in order. Because they actually had a DEA chemist there who made meth for them, They did. This is the story that I've been told, that, and Vince has gone on record plenty of times. They had a DEA chemist, and he made meth for them. And it's not that they shot that, but he showed them how to do it. And so when they shot the stuff for our guys to do, they shot it, 21, I don't know the scene number, but 21 Apple, that would be this step. 21 Baker, that would be the next step, the next step, the next step. So really, I don't want to say it was an assembly, because it wasn't, but at least it was done in the stages, and I just started then to make a select roll and look at what was cool in that stage and try and put that together. I have made so much meth on this show, and I still don't know how it was made. Yes.
Did you have flexibility for editing for commercial breaks? Is that
No,
pretty much-
those are written in. Those are definitely written in. You mean the act breaks and stuff? No, our writers take care because they want to know where their story. I've heard that's actually Mad Men. They don't. Like Matt Weiner has, they write like one whole hour and they don't put any breaks in. That's what I've heard. But our show, they want control of where their dramatic, ends are and stuff.
Is that usually the case with previous TV productions?
I've never seen it done any other way except for stuff like HBO and Showtime, where they don't have any act breaks. Yes.
One last question,
Oh,
we have
shit.
to move on.
Well, you
I
guys
know.
gotta fight for that
I know,
one.
it's
Yes.
tough.
We see this brutal montage, and then 5 minutes later, we see a cuss word blurred out on a piece of paper. What's your view on censorship?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What's your view on censorship, and have you had any problems with the censorship?
Can you repeat that question?
The censorship, I guess, he's asking about censorship as far as violence. I don't think we've ever had a violent censorship problem. We have had language censorship problems. And forgive me, because I don't know if I know this whole story, but I've heard it a couple of times now, where AMC does not have a TV MA rating, and so there are only certain words that you can say during the hour. For a while, it was we could say "for shits" show or something. No, fucks at all, except for they would fight for one per season. So we've gotten away with one per season. And it used to be where they would write them, in the first season they would write a lot of like language, and they would just like pull the sound down. And then AMC said they didn't want to do that anymore. So, the language has just, kind of gotten fairly clean lately. I haven't really noticed it. But that's the only time, and from what I understand, it's about a carriage license that the cable companies have with AMC. So they just, FX, I've noticed that they can do a lot of stuff on there we can't do. So that's the way I understand it.
We have to move along.
Sorry.
Thanks, Kelley
Thank you.
Dixon and Trevor Baker.